All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of City Council for Monday, November the 25th, held here on the homelands of the Ktunaxa peoples. Note that Councillor McBain was here 10 minutes ago and now he's not. He is actually online. He is feeling under the weather this evening, so has opted to Zoom in rather than sit amongst us. Thanks very much for doing that, Jason. Okay, do we have any late items this evening, Maurice?
We don't have any late items, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, could I have a mover to adopt the agenda? Councillor Dunneback, thank you. And Councillor Karen seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up is the adoption of the regular minutes, or the minutes, pardon me, of the regular meeting held on November 12th. Mover, please. Councillor Cairns moves. Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. All right, jumping right into bylaws for first, second, and third readings. We have the general zoning bylaw amendments, bylaw 2773 and 2774. We have a number of motions, half a dozen motions associated with this. Do you do them all individually? Okay, so we'll put the first one on the floor, and then Troy can speak to kind of all of them, I guess, and then we'll roll through and do the other five. So the motion on the floor is that council approve first reading of bylaw 2773. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McGuire moves and Councillor Fox seconds. All right, Troy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so there's two bylaw amendments here tonight. One bylaw, number 2773, proposes some housekeeping amendments to the zoning bylaw 1850, which applies to most properties in town. And the second bylaw is bylaw number 2774, which applies, which is further housekeeping amendments to the Alpine Resort zoning bylaw. There's some similar changes in each bylaw and then a couple unique changes in each bylaw. So I'll just give a general overview, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to help.
All right.
I will just note as well that these bylaw amendments will not require a public hearing. So we've already given notice through the newspaper of the proposed first reading in accordance with legislation. Bylaw 2773, a couple of the unique amendments are regarding mobile homes and the R5 zone, which is the Creekside Mobile Home Park. So the definition amendment there is updating that through some communications with the mobile park owner and some of the proposals that have been being considered there, and reviewing some of the similar bylaws in other communities that have recently updated their definitions there. This is to allow for a little more flexibility in the types of mobile homes that can be allowed as a mobile home. Previously, we just had the one standard, the Z240 standard, which refers to kind of a typical or traditional mobile home that's built on a frame and transported to a site and put on kind of more of a temporary foundation so that it can be easily moved. But what's happening more recently is a lot of the more modular home CSA standard A277. Similarly, they're often built off site, or they are built off site and often assembled in pieces on site, but put on a foundation. So this definition amendment will allow for either type to be allowed. And in fact, we'd already discovered that there's a couple proposed and also existing in the park there that was unclear to us in the past. So they're very similar, looking structures, similar style of structure, and will fit in there quite well. Also proposing some, just in reviewing some of the variances that have been proposed in the past around the R5 zone and the mobile home park zone. This amendment here will modify the setback or the separation requirements. So the current language in the bylaw requires a 6 meter separation between structures. And what we're clarifying here is that that only applies to the structures from an adjacent home, not to the subject home, if you will. And then the other few amendments in this bylaw relate to kind of landscaping features that are kind of ground level, less than 0.6 meters or 2 feet in height above ground. So these can be things like planters and stairs, walkways, low decks or patios, we're often calling them. Just clarifying that those can be closer to the side setbacks or property lines than previously allowed, and that's just to help to minimize issues with variances and when it's really not necessary for those types of structures. Cleaning up the references to retaining walls and reflecting the recent guidelines from engineers and geoscientists of BC that are lowering the maximum height from 1.5 to 1.2 meters for retaining walls before they require professional design. And this actually matches up with the proposed building bylaw amendment that is also on the agenda tonight. The bicycle parking requirements, just further sort of tidying that up, just clarifying this would require less bike parking spaces for smaller units. So previously we just had one unit regardless of the size. So this will help with some of those projects where they're sometimes tight on space for that stuff. And another one is reflecting that we're getting a lot more inquiries around solar panels. So this is just including them as an exception to building height requirement, just because they really form part of the structure, and certainly don't want to discourage the technology on structures when they can be an important part of reducing energy costs. Over to bylaw 2774.
Troy, just before you go there, we'll just do
Good call.
a check here. Any questions on this particular bylaw, council? No. I have one. Fences. I don't see fences mentioned as an example. There is no setback requirement for fences. Could you just clarify that?
Yeah, that's already in the bylaw. It doesn't require clarification in this case. So fences are a permitted or permissible structure within a setback. So they're allowed to be up to the parcel line, but not over the parcel line.
Yeah. And refresh my memory, Troy. What is the maximum height for a fence?
I believe it's 7 feet.
7 feet?
Yeah. That was a change of quite a few years ago from recommendation from the Deer Committee.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So yeah, the other bylaw amendment, bylaw 2774, that it affects properties in the Alpine Resort area. So one of the key changes here, the unique changes with this bylaw, has to do with the grade definition and how that factors into the calculating the height of a building and the maximum height requirements. So this proposed change here will make the grade definition consistent between the two bylaws. So we actually had two slightly different definition in this bylaw that actually was actually more of a restriction on the building height. So this will make it more consistent with the existing 1850 bylaw, and which is more consistent with most communities' definition for grade. And then the Alpine Resort does still have a fairly unique height calculation, kind of considering that many of those properties in that area are on sloping sites. And so it uses kind of a roof height averaging calculation, but it's important that the grade definition is consistent here. So what it said before was, let me just back up first. In the 1850 bylaw, grade is just determined as the average level of grade on all sides of a building. So to simplify that, on 4 sides, you would determine what the grade level is on each side of the building, and then take the average of those sides and use that as your kind of base plane to measure height from, which in many cases is to the top of a sloping roof or the high point of a roof. In the Alpine bylaw, similarly referenced the average level of grade on all sides, but then it said to reference the lowest of those averages. So, so in fact, it was especially on a sloping side, it made a big difference on where you measured that base height from. And to a flat roof structure, it'd be similar that it's to the high point of that roof. But if there's a sloping roof, or in many cases they're quite complex roof designs in the Alpine bylaw, there's a formula for averaging the height of those roof planes to that average grade. So this, in effect, in most situations will raise the base grade height so that there's a little more flexibility in the height calculation, and most importantly for us, minimizes chance of error in interpretation and application of that height calculation, and makes it consistent between the two bylaws.
So Troy, the probably the most visible example would have been the homes that were built up on Deer Run, where on that one side of the road, with the lots that are left anyway, they have quite a massive slope going down the hill. So how would that be calculated then?
Yeah, so like I said, so on each building, the average grade of each side of the building is determined, and then you take the average of all those sides.
Right.
So
okay.
previously, you'd take the lowest grade, so you just automatically basically measure from the lowest side of the house.
Right. Okay. Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, are the height restrictions similar in the Alpine zone to other areas in town, like the actual
Yeah,
heights?
that was through the small scale multi-unit housing amendments back in June. That was one of the things, as we made the height rules generally consistent. There is some exceptions to that, but like I said, there still remains a different calculation of maximum height in the Alpine bylaw, just because of the generally sloping sites. Yeah.
I remember now in the 1850, there were some diagrams that were used to kind of educate.
Yeah, and that's one of our kind of next steps here, is we want to approve upon the communications around that by providing kind of a guideline for calculating height. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Troy.
Similarly to the other bylaw, the landscaping and retaining wall changes are also applied there. Same with the building or bicycle parking, sorry, and the solar panel height exception as well. So that's the overview there. And yeah, we're recommending first 3 readings, and then then we would return for adoption at likely the next meeting.
All right. Thank you, Troy.
Yeah.
Council, any questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Donneback.
I wonder about the houses on Deer Park, how they're using the nice big beautiful rock, and like, does that qualify as an engineered retaining wall compared to, say, the big, I'll call them the extra large lock blocks that you see like on the side of the highway? Just curious.
Yeah, for sure. Those a stacked rock wall would or could be defined as a retaining wall and be subject to the requirement here if it meets those height requirements. And there is additional regulation in there for stacked rock retaining walls to minimize the maximum height of each section of wall. So they have kind of a staggered effect, and that kind of softens the appearance of it, I guess, by breaking up with some planting beds and stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, Troy.
Yeah.
All right. Call the question on first reading. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next up is that council approve second reading of bylaw 2773. Mover, please. Councillor McGuire, thank you. Councillor Karen seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. And finally, the council approve third reading of bylaw 2773. Councillor Cairns moves and Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have that council approve first reading of bylaw 2774. Councillor Roberts moves, Councillor McGuire seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. The council approves second reading of bylaw 2774. Mover, please. Councillor Fox, thank you. And Councillor Karen seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. And finally, the council approved third reading of bylaw 2774. Councillor McGuire moves and Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Awesome. Thanks, Troy. Don't go away. Next up, we have some additional general amendments, this time for bylaw 2620. And first up is the council approved first reading of bylaw 2775. Councillor Roberts moves and Councillor McGuire seconds. Just wanted to make sure I got the bylaw number right. Not the amendment number, the bylaw number. Yeah. Moved and seconded. Yep, we're good. Okay. Go ahead, Troy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, bylaw 2775 proposes some general amendments to the building bylaw 2620. That has been, but the original bylaw was adopted in 2018, and this would be the it's the second housekeeping amendment, but the first amendments did not proceed. This just is a series of kind of general housekeeping, some of which are just reflecting changes in provincial legislation and references to bring those references into current use and make them accurate to the existing legislation or recent legislation. So one of those refers to, there's a reference in the septic disposal system section, references the now rescinded Health Act, and now references the current sewerage system regulation. We're adding in a provision to require a locking lid on pools or spas and hot tubs where there's no protective fence installed. So that just is clarifying that, particularly around pools. There's a few different definitions changes. So again, references to architect, engineer, and geoscientist. That's just reflecting the current acts and regulations that came into effect with the Professional Governance Act. Again, similar to the zoning amendments there, this is the corresponding amendments for retaining walls and just referencing those newly recommended guidelines from the engineers and geoscientists of BC for retaining wall design, reducing the minimum requirement for registered professional design from 1.5 meters down to 1.2 meters. Yeah, and then in the definition for value of work. So this is an important section or important definition and language within the Appendix A, which is the fees table for building permits. So these proposed amendments, the first one is just a simple kind of cleaning up the table. There was a kind of a 2-column table there, or 2 columns of fees, one prior to 2019 and one after 2019. So just for kind of simplicity and clarification, we're just deleting the one column that's no longer referenced and doesn't apply to anything. Calculating the value of work. So in this case, the previous bylaw had a kind of a guide or a table that was used sometimes to help determine some fees when it wasn't always clear on what the declared value was or how to maybe calculate the value there. But what we were finding is because that was so outdated, and some projects were wanting to reference that table, and we were finding a number of projects undervalued, and of course that is important for a number of reasons. One, want to make sure that the building permit fees that we collect are accurate and accurately reflect the scale and complexity of the project, but also that making sure that the non-market assessment change, so the values of work that we communicate to BC Assessment, making sure that those are accurate and reflecting again the accurate construction values, which affects the amount of tax collected by the city. Also in Appendix B, this is where we have the climatic information for building design. So there's a number of references in there that are used by building designers and the design of structural design. So things like roof snow loads, wind loads. And in this case, there's new seismic data requirements for designing buildings. So that's updating that information. And then there's just a real minor change to the moisture index that's being updated as well with that. And then just this one is just more for kind of clarification. There's no change to the map itself other than just kind of updating the base map information and the references in there to the snow load zone. So the map of snow load zones is one of the attachments in Appendix B. And so it's just a kind of a newer version of the same map that we hope is a little more clear and easier to use. That's it for those amendments. And again, recommending that all three readings at this time and probably proceed or come back to the next meeting for adoption.
Thank you, Troy. Councillor Roberts, go ahead.
Thank you, Troy. This is some pretty cool stuff in here. While I was reading, I just had a question pop into my head with regard to pool spas, hot tubs. Is there anything in the applications or the permit underneath the current sewage system regulations about the safe way of getting rid of the water in your hot tub? Like, do you just put a hose out over the deck and let it all drip down, or what's the plan there? I just wondered if there was a rule.
Sorry about that. Thank you. It's not in the building bylaw, and I feel like there's a reference in the sewer bylaw about, because I think we do want that water to be discharged to the sewer system, but it has to be properly dealt with before it's put in there. So dechlorinated or before it. So there's a treatment provided to that before it goes there. I think there is a lot of cases where people just do dump it, in their yard somewhere or whatever, which is maybe not ideal, but because that can have some impact to vegetation and groundwater as well. But we don't want it going. If it's, it should be treated before it is dumped anywhere, I guess is the more simple answer. But.
Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, just in regard to the retaining wall issue where we're at 1.5 meters, I'm curious whether our municipal insurance association has made a change to their recommendation, or if this is just coming from internal, trying to reference the engineers as opposed to the insurance broker.
That is referencing the guidelines from the Engineers and Geoscientists BC, but I think we have reviewed in general the amendments here with MIABC about these changes. So I think that would be supported there. So I think I'm trying to remember. I don't recall that. I don't recall seeing a specific direction from them on that, but it's been recommended by building officials of BC and engineers, geoscientists.
Further?
Yeah, I was just curious because I'm under the impression that it's up to municipalities to set this, and that it's not stipulated in the BC building code, and that if our insurer is recommending 1.5 meters, it's unclear to me why we would be moving to 1.2 based on a recommendation from an organization that, in my calculation, may have a conflict of interest here.
Well, we can, if you'd like for us to confirm on that, we can follow up and bring more information.
Yeah, I was just confirming that this wasn't coming from the insurance company. This is coming from just an internal review.
This is from more from the engineers, geoscientists, not. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to get that clarity.
Thanks, Councillor McGuire. Did you want any follow-up on that? No. Okay. Further, council? Okay, call the question on first reading. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next up, we have approval of second reading of bylaw 2775. Councillor Roberts moves and Councillor Karen seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. And finally, the council approved third reading of bylaw 2775. Councillor McGuire moves, Councillor Karen seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you, Troy. All right, next up we have the bylaw 2776, which is the City of Kimberley Sewer Rates and Regulations bylaw. This is for consideration of first, second, and third readings. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Cairns moves. Councillor Fox seconds. Krista, did you want to comment?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, at last Monday's special budget meeting, staff presented to council the revenue policy overview, during which utility fees were reviewed in detail. In that presentation, staff recommended that the 5% increase for sewer rates be maintained as outlined in the 5-year financial plan. That 5% increase translates to a $5.76 per quarter increase for a single family unit, and will result in approximately $115,000 in additional revenue towards the sewer fund. So at the end of that presentation, a resolution was to increase the rates by 5% was passed by council and has been reflected in the attached bylaw amendment.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Krista. Council, further comment? Call the question. All those in favor of first 3 readings? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next up, we have bylaw 2777, which is the City of Kimberley Waterworks Rates and Regulations bylaw, for consideration again of first 3 readings. Mover, please. Councillor Cairns, thank you. Councillor McGuire seconds. Any further comments or questions on this one? Did you want to make a comment, Krista, or are we?
No, similarly, it's in addition, we've also council considered bulk water rates to bring it closer to cost recovery. Ultimately decided on 20%. And we also reflected the unit conversion for 1,000 gallons to reflect the cubic meters, which would the industry's.
Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that I had been doing my conversions incorrectly. I didn't realize we were using imperial gallons in that original per 1,000 rate. And we actually charge even less than we thought, or than I thought, for bulk water. So I'm glad to see the increase.
Hence the move to metric. All right, further comments, council? Call the question. All those in favor of first 3 readings? Any opposed? That motion is carried. All right, next up, we have bylaw number 2778. This is an amendment for 2024 for consideration of first 3 readings. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Cairns, thank you. Councillor Fox seconds. Krista.
Okay, so yes, since the adoption of the 2024 to 2028 5-year financial plan bylaw back in May of 2024, there have been several resolutions made by council to reflect some changes to either budgets or to advance projects in order to take advantage of granting opportunities. And so this financial plan amendment reflects those resolutions by council throughout the year.
All right, and to be clear, this is current year financial plan.
Correct.
Yeah. Did you want to do a brief summary of what those projects were for public consumption?
Sure, absolutely. So we have an increase to capital expenditure for the Kimberley Bike Park to account for higher than anticipated costs for that phase 1 project, as well as the $30,000 operating expense increase for the accessibility plan development. And the next few are in relation to some granting opportunities that became available, including a fuels treatment project, Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for volunteer and composite fire departments equipment and training, the Center 64 stage and landscaping, the Civic Center curling rink chiller and compressor, Marsden Street active transportation, and St. Mary's Ave reconstruction project. And finally, there was an additional expenditure to implement a detection and response software to help us react to possible cyber attacks. That's becoming more prevalent in all industries.
Yeah, thank you, Krista. Busy times. Some really cool projects in there as well, and some that are of some urgencies, such as the chiller for the Civic Center and the curling rink. Council, questions or comments? Councillor Dunneback, go ahead.
I just have a question about the bike park. I thought that was all grant money that developed that. I'm just curious as to why now we're seeing an increase in tax for a bike park that I thought was covered by grants.
So to be clear, that it's an increase in expenditure, not tax, right? It's coming from reserves.
Okay.
Go ahead, Krista.
Yes, thank you. That was a good explanation.
So do we know the reason for the increase though?
Yeah.
Was there detail around that?
Yeah, I can just refer back to my notes here. I believe. Yes, it was. It was brought back. It was brought to council back in May 2024, actually, right around the same time that the financial plan bylaw was adopted. And that I don't have the specifics of that increase. I'm not sure if possibly somebody else Jim might be able to.
But those, the authorization to expend that 26 came from that council meeting in
Correct.
May.
That's right.
Yeah, so we're just bringing this forward now as an amendment to the financial plan.
But the project hadn't been started in May yet, so how do we know that there was an overrun? Am I offside here?
Yeah, I can jump in here quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I think this was around the time where the project was put out. The project was actually in two separate phases. The city entered into a contract for the dirt jump portion of it, and then the paved pump track portion of it was managed and paid for through the club, Kimberley Trail Society. So I think that the change in price came about as a result of the competitive processes that were associated with it in advance of that project to get the cost put into place. And I'd have to go back. I can certainly go back and have a look and follow up with council. It almost looks to me, reading through this, that there was some additional funding that was through CBT. Their initial contribution, it looks like, may have been increased, but I need to confirm that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Dunneback. Do we have further comments, council? All right, so we'll call the question then on first three readings. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. So all of these bylaws that have had first three readings tonight will in all likelihood come back at the next meeting, next regular meeting for adoption. All right, next up, we have the Fire Service Bylaw Amendment 2772 for adoption. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Cairns, thank you. Councillor McGuire seconds. We've been through this a couple times, Council. Are there any questions? Call the question then on adoption. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, next up under new business, we have the Community Project Event Grants Evaluation Committee terms of reference to be adopted by council. The motion on the floor is that council endorse the Community Project Event Grants Evaluation Committee terms of reference as attached to the report from the Manager of Community Development and Communications. We'll start with that one and we'll move to the second one once approved. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McGuire, thank you very much. Seconder, Councillor Fox, thank you. Pam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This
staff report is concerning the community grants policy that was approved in October of this year. And within that policy, we outlined a new process for evaluating the project and event grants. The new process is going to improve the process for allocating city funds to the various projects and programs that we allocate our funds to. The terms of reference will outline the committee members and their terms, their qualifications, the meeting procedures for that one annual meeting that we'll hold, timelines and the voting procedures, as well as some other kind of stipulations for how we're going to allocate that funding. Grant applications are due on November 30th, and we'll hold that annual meeting shortly thereafter. And then final allocations should be announced at the first regular council meeting in 2025.
All right, thank you, Pam. Council, questions or comments? This will, currently, we have a weighted average of the 7 elected officials over the course of the applications that come in. And this will certainly bring increased accountability and fairness to the overall process for the team that will be reviewing these and making the recommendation to council. So I think this is a great move, great improvement in the process. Thank you for all your work on this, Pam. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Second part of this terms of reference adoption is the council appoint Councillor Diana Fox, Councillor Woody McGuire, and Councillor Sandra Roberts as City Council representatives on the Community Project Event Grants Evaluation Committee for a 2-year term ending on September 30th, 2026. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Cairns moves and Councillor Dunneback seconds. Call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. So will that begin with this year's round, which is coming up here imminently, I guess?
Yes, applications are due November 30th, and we've tentatively planned a December 12th afternoon meeting to review those.
All right, excellent. Councillor Dunneback, go ahead.
I really like the fact that there's one application per group. I felt overwhelmed and it felt diluted with multiple asks from one society. So thank you.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Councillor Dunneback. Next up, we have the RCMP occupancy agreement for the next 5-year term. And the motion on the floor is that council approve the occupancy permit between the City of Kimberley and the RCMP related to the city-owned building on Archibald for the period of January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2029, with the right to renew for 2 additional terms of 5 years. And further, the council authorized the mayor and chief admin officer to execute the agreement once notice has been given in accordance with section 26 of the community charter. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Roberts, thank you. Councillor Karen seconds. I don't think it's our building. Did you want to make a couple of comments on this, Jim?
Sure.
Well, or before you do that, I should ask, does council have any specific questions? Councillor Roberts, go ahead.
Do the RCMP pay us rent, or do we just provide the building?
Yeah, so Jim will give us an overview on that. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, so we budget $6,000 a year. That's what's written into the proposed agreement here with the RCMP. So this is proposing to renew an agreement that's expiring at the end of December of 2024. So under the Police Act, municipalities over 5,000 must provide their own policing, either by forming their own police department, contracting with an existing police department, or contracting with the province for the RCMP. So of course, the City of Kimberley is historically contracted out with the RCMP. So under that, municipalities between 5,000 population and 14,999 are obligated to pay 70% of the contract policing costs. And we're also obligated to pay or 100% of the costs associated with the detachment and equipment. So this is, under this agreement, we're providing, carrying through on the commitment to provide that, the detachment. And there's a cost sharing formula whereby it's calculated on a proportionate amount of the municipal force, including the admin staff that we have operating out of the detachment. Some folks may not be aware of this, but we actually have two unionized employees, USW employees that operate out of the detachment. And there's also two provincial members on the detachment as well. So there's a calculation, it works out to, I think it's 16.67% based on those two provincial employees. So that $6,000 is a result of that calculation. So we take our operating costs, including utilities, insurance, janitorial costs, and we send that to the RCMP on an annual basis, and they reimburse us that 16.67%, which works out to the $6,000. So that's the extent of the revenue we get under that, and it is pushed out from that calculation. Yeah, I think that's about it in a nutshell. If there's any other questions on the RCMP arrangement, certainly try to answer.
Councillor Dunlap, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I personally haven't seen, or maybe I wasn't paying attention, but like term of life for that building, is that something that we're going to be looking at, that we have to replace it anytime soon? I know we don't have cells there right now, and I just wondering about the structural integrity of something that needs to be secure.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It is a municipal building, just like this one or the various rec facilities that we own. So yeah, eventually that facility will need to be replaced. We've done some capital upgrades in recent years. We've redone the roof on it. Last year and this year, we're putting in a backup power supply. We put that into City Hall, Fire Hall, and we're doing it in RCMP as well. And the province shares in those costs as well. So if we're doing capital upgrades, it's the same thing, that same percentage split, 16.67%. They'll reimburse us for that as well.
I think we also added or upgraded the HVAC system a couple of years ago as well.
Yeah, and something else
So
that
it's in
forms,
pretty good shape, I guess, is the point. It's not a building that has been, kind of left to its own devices. Can you speak to the arrangement we have up with regard to the cells?
yeah, so the detachment in town doesn't have functioning jail cells. So we've made an arrangement with the city of Cranbrook whereby we utilize their cells. I think the 2025 cost associated with that is $55,400. So we typically enter into 5-year agreements with them. I think we're in year 3, 2 or 3 of year 3, I think, of the current 5-year agreement. So that's negotiated every 5 years. But
Yeah, I remember this from actually my first term on council, 2012, I believe it was. We had a choice to make. We put in the capital improvements to upgrade this building for the cells, or enter into an agreement with Cranbrook. If I remember correctly, in 2012, it was close to $500,000 renovation that would have been needed on that building in order to secure the cells themselves, plus additional operating costs to operate them. And there was a cost benefit that was done, and it was considerably less expensive over kind of life of contract in order to contract this out with Cranbrook. And that's why that arrangement still exists today. Further question?
Do we have a backup plan if that arrangement goes away? Like if Cranbrook decides that way they don't have space for Kimberley, just with the growth of everything, just a question.
yeah, not currently.
Yeah, I guess the backup plan would be to renovate the building or build a new building. We'd be coming to council for capital cost upgrades.
Yeah, just like I say, just a
Yeah.
forward thinking thought, because everything's growing faster than.
Further? Council? All right, hearing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next up, we have the 2025 meeting calendar. And the motion on the floor is the council approve the 2025 council meeting calendar as labeled draft version A as presented in the staff report dated November 25th. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McGuire, thank you. And Councillor Fox seconds. Discussion. Are you going to speak to this? Yeah, thanks, Maurice.
So as we do annually about this time of the year, we have to prepare the council calendar for the following year. And we also have a statutory requirement to publish that calendar for residents to be informed when council is going to meet. This year, when I prepared the calendar, I also looked at maybe creating some internal capacity for corporate administration staff as well as the other departments, because what we're finding is the cycle of meetings every week in the fall and winter, spring is definitely taking resources away from actually working on more longer term projects or like staff reports that require more substantial research and development, such as bylaw policies and things like that. So version A is a version that proposes one meeting, 2 meetings a month, with the exception of July, August, and December. And this is also based on some comparison that I did with other municipalities. So it my analysis was attached to the report. I looked at the municipality the size of Kimberley and as well as some of the municipalities in the Kootenays. It was kind of interesting to look at Nelson and Cranbrook, who have bigger populations than us and would also have a bigger amount of business that have less meeting than us. And also the idea of like reducing the number of meeting was to create meeting efficiencies, because one of the things that we've noticed is that some of the issues that could be like the staff reports that could be better planned, they end up as a time sensitive staff report on a special meeting agenda, because we add a committee of the whole meeting that could be transformed into a special meeting. So draft version B is maybe a little bit less drastic. It's got, instead of 2 committee of the whole a month, it's got 1 committee of the whole a month and the 2 regular meetings. So
All right, thanks, Maurice. Council, comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, I imagine this may end up increasing the length of our meetings, but one thing I have noticed is that quite often I've seen some important decisions being moved to special council meetings, and this will eliminate that problem. I feel like a lot of these committee of the wholes ended up being just another special meeting as opposed to really committee of the wholes. I support this generally. I don't have a lot of insight other than, maybe is there any potential? Here's a question: is there any potential to schedule other special meetings or other committee of the whole meetings throughout the year as needed, or as opposed to scheduling ahead of time?
Great question. Thanks, Councillor McGuire.
yes, definitely we can schedule special meetings. And we just need 24-hour notice. Staff would definitely work with like whoever needs a special meeting to make sure that we give council plenty of notice.
Is it the same with committee of the whole?
It can be the same with committee of the whole. It's just that the rules with committee of the whole is it's more about how the meeting functions. So we could have a special committee of the whole.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that those extra meetings can be held on an ad hoc basis as we need them. It doesn't mean we're not going to have them. We just, as we need them, we'll have them. And that will, as you read in the report, I mean, free up a lot of time for staff to be able to get kind of other work done rather than just preparing for and following up on the meetings. Go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
I just don't want us to be going around having a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting. If we're going to have a meeting, let's make it fruitful and full of the things that we're supposed to be doing. I hate that if staff has to scrounge up stuff to put in a meeting because there's supposed to be a meeting, or that they haven't had time to develop something big enough properly to give us the full picture. So unless something untoward comes up that requires our attention, that could be called upon quite quickly, I'm in favor of just keeping it to have a meeting when we need a meeting.
Thanks, Councillor Roberts. Okay, seeing no more comments, call the question. All those in favor of option A, draft A, I should say. Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you, Maurice. Next up, we have the acting mayor appointments for 2025. The motion on the floor is that councillors be appointed as acting mayor for the year 2025 as identified in the agenda. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McGuire, thank you. Councillor Dunneback seconds. Any comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. All right, next up, we have the 2025 council appointments. I guess we have to do all these one at a time, correct? Yeah. So there are a few. Okay, so let's just walk down the list. First up is that council approve the reappointment of Councillor Sue Cairns to the Mark Creek Watershed Committee for a one-year term ending December 31st, 2025. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McGuire, thank you. Councillor Dunneback seconds. All those in favor? The motion is carried. The council approve the reappointment of Councillor Sue Cairns as the city liaison to the Kimberley Nature Park Society for a one-year term ending December 31st, 2025. Councillor Fox moves and Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Before we go on, can I ask Maurice, the one-year term, can you kind of clarify why the one-year term? We have 2 years left. Yeah, hang on.
We could definitely make it 2 if like you're okay to changing the dates on the 2 previous ones. We can do that for the rest of them.
I think that makes the most sense. Otherwise, we're going through this again in, in 12 months. And you
do create a relationship with the group that you're working with. That I think.
Yeah. So do we need an amendment, or can you just?
If we're all good with changing it to 2-year term, this and to ending, it's actually not December 31st though. It's going to be October. It's going to be September 31st.
September 31st. Okay.
30th.
September 31st. All right.
September 30th, 2026, and then there's
Okay.
the election in October.
Yeah, that just seems to make more sense. I apologize for not identifying that earlier, Maurice.
Then
Okay.
I apologize for not catching that too as well when we were writing the report.
Next up, the council appoint Councillor Sue Cairns as the city liaison to the Healthy Kimberley Food Recovery Depot for a term ending September 30th, 2026. Mover, please. Councillor McGuire, thank you. Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. The council approve the reappointment of Councillor Kevin Dunneback as the city liaison to the Kimberley Trail Society for a term ending September 30th, 2026. Councillor Fox moves and Councillor Cairns seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. The council appoint Councillor Kevin Dunneback as the city liaison to the Tex Sullivan Mine Liaison Committee for a term ending September 30th, 2026. Mover, please. Councillor McGuire, thank you. Councillor Karen seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. The council appoint Councillor Diana Fox as the city liaison to the Kimberley District Heritage Society for a term ending September 30th, 2026. Councillor Cairns moves. Councillor McGuire seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. The council appoint Councillor Diana Fox to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for a term ending September 30th, 2026. Mover, please. Councillor McGuire, thank you. Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. The council appoint Councillor Woody McGuire as the city liaison to the Kimberley Youth Action Network for a term ending September 30th, 2026. Councillor Cairns moves and Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. The council appoint Councillor Woody McGuire as the city liaison to First Nations for a term ending September 30th, 2026. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Councillor Fox moved and Councillor Karen second. Sorry about that. Slow down. The council appoint Councillor Woody McGuire as the city liaison to the Kimberley Arts Council Center 64 Society for a term ending September 30th, 2026. Mover, please. Councillor Cairns, thank you. Councillor Fox seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. That council approve the reappointment of Councillor Jason McBain to the Kimberley Public Library Board for a term ending September 30th, 2026. Councillor McGuire moves and Councillor Karen seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. That council approve the reappointment of Councillor Jason McBain as the city liaison to the Kimberley Health Center Society for a one-year term ending September 30th. Councillor Cairns moves and Councillor Fox seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. So clarification on this. Jason, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
So up to this point, you are actually a member of that board, correct?
Correct.
And that was not an appointment, that was a volunteer position, correct?
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, so I think consistent with all of the other boards, we're going to need you to resign from that board to take on the liaison role with council.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I can do it. I'll
Not
just
much.
make
will-
sure I bring it up at the next meeting and I'll figure out all the formalities and. get it
Okay,
straight.
awesome. Not much will change. It's just the specific relationship will change.
Yep,
And
okay.
it's consistent with kind of the direction from the province to kind of stay away from boards. The only one that there is legislated is the library board. So I think that's coming up next.
Right, understood.
Oh, we've already done that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
So that's legislated that we have a counselor on the board. So
Right, so the health center one is the one I need to resign from, correct?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, can do.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. Next up, the council appoint Councillor Sandra Roberts as the city liaison to the Kimberley District Chamber of Commerce for a term ending September 30th, 2026. Mover, please. Councillor Dunneback, thank you. And Councillor McGuire seconds. All those in favor? I'm afraid not. Thanks. We can chat about that later, Diana. Yeah, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Yeah. Next up, we have the council appoint Councillor Sandra Roberts to the Association of Kootenay-Boundary Local Government Convention Committee for a one-year term ending December 31st, 2025. It's an event. Councillor McGuire, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cairns. All those in favor? That motion is carried. And finally, the council direct the chief admin officer to assign the role of city liaison to the Tourism Kimberley Society for a term ending September 30th, 2025, to the Manager of Community Development and Communications in place of a council representative. Mover, please. Councillor McGuire, thank you. Councillor Fox seconds. Any discussion on this one, council? Call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Just by way of comment on that, the interaction between Tourism Kimberley and the City of Kimberley is more at a staff level with the Executive Director of Tourism Kimberley as opposed to working with the Board of Directors. And it just makes more sense for us to have a staff person assigned to that role. I think we'll end up with a much closer relationship and more productivity between the city and Tourism Kimberley. Councillor Dunneback first, then Councillor Roberts.
Just the appointment seems kind of vague because who are the people? Like it's just the whole society and all of staff? Or is it?
No, the staff is the Manager of Community Development and Communications.
Okay.
Pam.
Oh,
Yeah, it's currently,
okay.
currently Pam. That doesn't mean sometime in the year, if she were to change jobs or whatever, we don't want to have to come
no,
back to council.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Roberts.
I just caught something that Jason noted, and I think he thinks you want him to resign from the hospital board rather than the library board.
No, the hospital board is
So,
correct.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said the library at the beginning.
No.
My
Thank-
my
No,
mistake.
that's fine. Thanks for the question. All right, next up, we have the check run in the amount of $1,093,618 to be approved as paid. Motion, please. Councillor McGuire, thank you. And Councillor Roberts seconds. We must have a non-routine in here somewhere. Sandra, is this more construction work?
For the word Claro, which there, and then there's some others that'll check this before we're beginning to spend money on the wastewater.
Okay. Any further questions or comments, council? Call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. All right. Before we kind of move into in camera, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the appointments, the liaison appointments. All of these appointments are to organizations that have a material relationship to the City of Kimberley. It's either legislated, for example, in the case of the library, they are a grant recipient, a long-term grant recipient, or we have management plans in place, as we do with the Nature Park Society, for example, or they are a reporting society to the City of Kimberley. There is a fiduciary responsibility that we have to kind of monitor activity and report on activities for these various organizations. And so that's materially how the names got on the list. I really appreciate council's time to sit down and talk about not just the appointments, but lots of other things that we had conversations for. We've got 20 attachments to have been put in to various organizations, which is a large number. And what I tried to do was to balance the needs of the organizations, council, capacity, kind of a variety of balancing acts to arrive at, at where we were. And I really appreciate, council's support in kind of where we ended up with this. The liaison role is primarily a communication role. This is not an assignment to be the champion of that particular organization or advocacy for the organization specifically, but to open a line of communication where the organization needs or wants to communicate to council. They can do that on a regular basis through the liaison, as opposed to having to set up either a delegation, well, primarily a delegation, to have to come to council and formally present. So this is kind of a two-way communication thing. And the whole idea is that councillors attend the meetings and report back on activities that are happening. So we're just up to date on what's going on, and if activities happen or decisions need to be made with respect to the relationship that we have, that all of that takes place in a much less in a quicker manner, in a much less formal manner. So the kind of as of the next regular meeting, we'll be starting up the Councillor Matters again, and the whole idea behind Councillor Matters is for council to report in on these various assignments. I'm going to ask if anybody wishes to contribute. I'm not going to do a roundtable because some councillors may not have had meetings over that period of time, and I don't want anybody to feel obliged that you have to say something even though meetings may not have taken place. So I'll just call open for comments, and anybody who wishes to speak about what's happening within the assignments can do that. I would ask that as we do that, that the time limit be kept to a maximum of a couple of minutes. By the time we add up 7 elected officials times a couple of minutes, we're getting into a lengthy extension of the meeting, and we've got staff waiting, kind of waiting for us to kind of finish our business. And I think we should respect the fact that staff are here on their time, and we'll try and keep that as efficient as we possibly can. If anybody wishes to communicate more to council on what's happening within any of these organizations, I would ask that you do a brief written report that can be distributed to all of council outside of the council meeting. The whole idea here is not to, express everything that has been absorbed from a particular meeting, but to just give the highlights.
Could I just have a clarification?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
You're switching me, so am I finishing this up in December and moving to a new one in January? Is that what's, or am I switching right now?
No, as of the next meeting.
Okay.
As of the next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some organizations will have meetings in December, some won't, they'll be later. Go ahead.
So as a follow-up to this meeting, the administrative assistant is going to do the letters to the organization, letting them know who's appointed starting January, and we'll provide contact information so that you can receive the agendas for those meetings.
Yeah, thanks, Grace. Okay, mover to move in camera, Councillor Dunneback, thank you. Councillor McGuire seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Jason, do you have the link?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, awesome. We'll see you back in a couple of minutes.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, staff.